take home the gold.
He could be too far. No, he's kicking. Oh, what a catch!
Puts a spicy forehand out in front of Naomi Morcilla.
Wu for the win. Team Canada. Garrett Wu!
Santos with the layout grab.
Oh, that fantastic grab. The claws of Chaffer.
Canada just became the world champions.
Yo, Canada and the rest of the world. You're listening to the Huckin podcast, and I'm one of your hosts, Theo. Bringing on a guest today. I'll let him introduce himself.
Yep, I'm Ben Klar, and this is your coast-to-coast guide for all things Canadian Ultimate.
Yes, Ben Klar. The name is familiar to maybe some. We're bringing him on because we're going to talk a couple tournaments that he was tournament director at, so that's pretty cool. But first off, Ben, you are a long-time listener. I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but you are a long-time listener of the show. This dates back to the inception of the show when I first met you kind of during COVID playing Frisbee, right?
Yeah, that's right. I do remember listening to this show and thinking, this is a cool guy. I want to meet this guy. And then, we eventually met each other, and I was in awe of finally getting to meet.
I didn't pay him to say that, by the way.
We chat pretty regularly since then.
Yeah, I would say I don't know how many people, especially kind of as you get older, like I still use the telephone. I'm just going to admit that. I know some of the kids out there just love to text, but Ben and I talk to each other on the phone probably multiple times a week, right, Ben? I would say like 3-4 times a week at least.
Yeah, I can usually expect to get a call out of nowhere in the evening when I'm going about my business, and there's Theo calling me. And usually I'm free. Sometimes I have more important things to do, but I always enjoy just chatting with my friends.
Yeah, and we chat about Ultimate, which is obviously what we're going to do here today. So, for those that don't know, Ben also played and helped start up a team called Pipe out of Toronto. And then, like I said, he's kind of taken more some of the admin side. He actually has a big mind for it. And I think we'll have to have Ben on again, talk about some of the stats things in Ultimate. But Ben has taken on a role where he helps TD some of these tournaments. So we're going to have him break down, offer less opinion, more statistical analysis, of what just happened. Because there are multiple tournaments that took place in the beautiful province of Ontario. One that leads to C4UC, and then one that's more on the uni side. So that's what we're going to talk about in the news right now.
We now have breaking news.
All right. So I know this tournament already happened, more than a week ago now, but we still got to talk about it because I don't know how many people know that it happened. Obviously, if you played it, you would have known. But this was a tournament called O4UC. Unfortunately for you, Ben, as a schedule maker, there were 17 teams, so it makes it slightly more difficult. But this tournament took place in Ottawa. You had a chance to go there, correct, in the capital city?
I was there, yes.
Setting up the fields bright and early?
Yep. Luckily, we had a bit of a later start on the Saturday, but we got a bright and early start on Sunday right after the time change, after losing an hour of sleep.
Oh, that's tough. That could affect some teams. But let's get right into business here, which is the pools. So we're not going to say every team, but we are going to talk about who won the pool. So Ben, why don't you kick us off of things going a little chalky out here to start pool play?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of really good teams at this tournament. Some of the top players in Ontario. So with only 4 spots to qualify for nationals, it was definitely a tight one. But Yum was the defending champions, not only from their regionals last year in Ontario, but also the national championships. They win their pool fairly easily, I would say. In Pool A, the next closest team being Speedy Boys coming from Kingston.
Shout out for sure.
Yep. Danie Parton was the winner of Pool B. again, not too much of a challenge for them. Just looking at the scores. Bubs was the winner of Pool B. We'll get to this in a minute in the bracket, but they did initially take down Davy Sitters, but things looked a little different in the bracket after that. And then No Name being the winner of that awkward pool of 5 in Pool D, where we had to squeeze in that extra team because we had 17 teams. Those were the 4 pool winners. They were the 4 teams that got to play in the semis and had a chance at first place.
And then, before we even continue to the bracket, I want to give some quick love. I know I use shout out a lot, so I'll say love. Some love to teams that travel from far away, specifically a team from Thunder Bay. Is that right? Thunder Bay?
Yep, we had a team coming from Thunder Bay.
Wow.
Yeah, they were glad to have more geographic diversity in the teams being represented at this tournament. We did have a lot of teams coming from the GTA. Despite the tournament being located in Ottawa, they were mostly GTA teams, Kingston team, some Hamilton area teams, a couple Ottawa teams. But
Barrie
Barrie too. That's right.
Yeah.
But then we've got some representation from even further north in Ontario this time. So glad they were able to make it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Even the results may not be where they want per se, but you got to get the experience playing against these like heavy hitters. So another team that got this experience is the TCU 20 team. So they actually take a game in their pool. They unfortunately don't compete for a spot for the 4th place. But was this you were there obviously? So was this a TCU 20 team that had West Coast players, or was it mostly just East Coast? If you remember,
if I'm remembering correctly, among the players I know, I do think it was mostly East Coast. I do know their coach, one of the coaches, Ed Guo, was there. I guess he came from the West Coast.
Flying from Van City
tournament. But
yeah.
Other than that, I don't have the roster in front of me right now. But I believe they were mostly East Coasters, or I realize I shouldn't say East Coasters, but from Ontario.
Yeah, because you'll offend Kelsey Hayden and the rest of the true East Coast out here, like Newfoundland, right? So, okay, now into the championship bracket. So, hey, this is where the rubber hits the road a little bit, and you get tighter matchups, right? So, you talked about Yum winning their pool pretty easily. That is not the case on Sunday morning because they win 17-16 over No Name. No Name, there are a bunch of young players in there, right? Like kind of not your up and comers, but they're already here, but more of a younger team, right?
Yeah. I mean, Oscar, having been teammates with him, he's
Stonehouse, right? For those who might not know him by just his first name, you know what I mean?
Danie, I guess, as more people know him, but he was playing on that team. Again, don't have the list in front of me right now, but it was a lot of the younger guys, but that didn't mean inexperience. They're a lot of the really solid younger players.
Yeah, they like we said, they put up a good matchup, and then Danie Parton, love the name. Adam O'Donnell, I'm not sure if he came up with that, but they beat Bubs, another team out of Toronto, 19-17, and then Yum takes it by 2. So once again, these are really close matchups. The fun really begins, Ben. Of course, you know, I feel like you're like evil scientist in some ways trying to come up with these brackets, but we're not going to go through every single game that happens in these brackets. We'd just be here forever. But there is a second place bracket and there's a 4th place bracket. So second place bracket is like the 2 teams, 2 seeds from each pool. And then the 3 seeds, hey, you still have a shot because you got to work all your way up. I don't think that actually happens, but hey, at least you get the chance. So let's look at some of the qualifying games. We'll go to the game to go. So that's Bub and Speedy boys. Bubs defeats the Kingston squad 18-17, so close matchup. And then Davy Sitters takes down No Name. So No Name kind of falling off of that semifinals. They drop into the second place bracket and they drop down again. So that's what happens there. So then Bubs and Davy Sitters takes place, and Davy Sitters wins. And you had hinted at that earlier. They they must have got some scouting or something because they got the revenge in that game.
It's always hard to beat a team twice when you're evenly matched. That's something I've noticed just watching games in general, and in some cases being part of it. But it's, when you're the team that won the first time, you're thinking, okay, we know what we needed to do to win that first game. Things were going well. And if you're a losing team, you need to make an adjustment. So I think that's why if you have evenly matched teams, it's often you end up seeing the losing team the losing team from the first game winning that second matchup.
Yeah. And so now the fourth place bracket, like I said, you can kind of move up. And so Golfi gets it sold. Let's give some love to them because they were the 3 seed in their pool. They win 3 consecutive games to get to the game to go here against No Name. So they also take down Speedy Boys, who had just come up or come down from the second place bracket. So they're playing a team that's technically higher based on how the bracket went. So that was really good showing from this Hamilton squad. And then No Name and TCU 20 go at it with a 2-point game. So once again, these matchups start to really tighten up. And then as I say that, No Name takes down Golfi, gets it sold by 12. And then eventually Bubs gets the last bid. So Bubs is going to C4UC. And so those are your 4 teams: Yum, Danie Parton, Babysitters, and Bubs. Competitive tournament. Then any other thoughts you have as the TD, the overseer of this tourney?
I mean, just overall really good competition. I think, yeah, like I said before, we saw some of the best players in Ontario playing against each other, and which is something you really don't see a lot in outdoor sevens, because you often have a lot of the top players playing on the same team, like GOAT being that team in Toronto. If you're in Ottawa, Phoenix, you have a lot of those top players playing together. So I find it really interesting to see some of those top players who are used to playing together for outdoor, suddenly they're competing against each other. And with this tournament where there aren't that many spots, you really have to show that you're the top of the top teams to qualify.
Yeah, it's funny seeing because teammates, right? Club teammates, TC teammates going at it. So fun stuff. Congrats to all the teams that qualified there. And then, of course, teams from all over the country will be going. And when is that tournament exactly? Do you know off the top of your head?
That would be April 13th, 14th. Yeah.
Oh, that's like cutting into tryout season out here. Okay.
It is getting close to that time, but yeah.
And where's it taking place? I actually don't know off the top of my head. So
it's in Quebec, just outside of Montreal.
Okay, so if you want to take a trip to Quebec and then play some Frisbee and then get ready for tryouts, because tryouts are coming up. So now we're going to move on to the final university tournament of the year. So there's a finale happening in Toronto, Central Tech Stadium, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, good school out there. So there were 2 tournaments previously, and then this is the 3rd tournament, and the kind of the overall points getter is the overall winner, correct? I just want to make that clear before we go into results.
Yeah, it was different from previous years. My understanding is that was because they weren't able to host that first
Kingston's
series
fault.
Tournament in Kingston. Yeah,
it's the Dome's fault.
So there were only 3 games or 3 tournaments in the series this time. There was no time for that kind of final tournament with the top 8 teams. So it was just the 3rd tournament in the series. All of the results from each of the 3 tournaments kind of counting evenly towards the final series results.
Yeah. So Ben, let's start off in the women's division. There's some upsets happening here in at least one pool. So walk us through, because there's less teams. Why don't you just say who, the teams in each pool and who won each pool, okay? So that the listener can know what's going on.
Yeah, if I've learned anything from this University Indoor Series, it's that results from one tournament means nothing about what you'll see at the next tournament. So we could call them upsets based on the seeding. The seeding is just a reflection of the most recent results, but it means nothing about the strength of the team in the current tournament. So
because they could switch rosters too, right? Because like, let's say because we saw that last year when I talked about Mac. I was actually like doing sleuthing. I was going through each Mac Y like roster to see how consistent it was, because sometimes it changes. So you're right. Based on the seeding, you could be upset, but hey, if you're Guelph, you're maybe stacking one roster than the other, and then the next tournament's the other way around. So, anyways, hit us up with the pools.
Yeah. So Pool A, there were 2 pools, each of them with 4 teams. Pool A was Mac Y, Carleton, Guelph X, Waterloo. Right away, a nice, tight, close game between Carleton and Waterloo. A low-scoring one, too. Waterloo just squeaks it out 9-8. I remember, I think that one of the fun things about being at indoor or at fours tournaments when there are so many games happening, especially when you're TDing, is you blow the whistle, you see the game's ending, and then you look around and see, oh, there's a game going on over there, I guess, Universe Point. And then you go over to watch. So I remember seeing that game going, and then, just about a minute after the whistle goes, Waterloo scores to take it 9-8. And other than that, the scores they weren't all that close in this pool, I guess. Mac Y over Waterloo 15-11. But Guelph X ends up taking this pool with pretty convincing wins for the most part. I think their closest matchup in that pool was winning by 6 against Carleton. So
wow, pretty dominant out here.
Yeah. And then Pool B was Toronto, Guelph X, Mac Y, and TMU.
Mac Y? No, Mac X, right? Mac X?
Mac X, yeah.
It's very confusing, like X, Y. Yeah. Just call it AB, like, come on.
Yeah. It's they get the choice about what letter they want to use. But Mac X, it's opposite to Guelph Y. That makes it extra confusing. Tula takes this pool with a 3-0 record. Their closest game was against Mac X. I don't know how the rosters compare, but that would have been a match or a rematch of a close game from the Brampton tournament. And then they take down TMU and Guelph Y pretty convincingly. TMU, I don't want to call it a surprising result because you never know what can happen at these tournaments, but I would say they're probably pretty happy with their 2 wins in Pool B. And then Mac X, Guelph Y finishing the rest of that pool.
So with this setup, every team gets to go to quarters. Obviously your 1-4 matchups are usually going to be pretty lopsided, and Guelph X, they take care of business 21-7 over their other teammate counterparts there. But you mentioned TMU, but it's actually like being surprised, and that's true, based on what we've seen kind of indoor series and outdoor. Waterloo, the 3 out of the Pool A actually gets a win here in quarters, so they win 13-9. Toronto handles Carleton 14-8, and then who made the schedule out here? I don't know, but somehow, some way, McMaster also plays their other squad. I say that in jest, of course.
Yeah.
McMaster Y wins 18-8, and so that sets up some semis, spicy ones, particularly kind of in the lower part of the bracket where McMaster Y defeats Toronto 10-8. Guelph X kind of takes care of business against Waterloo, and then we see the final here, 15-14. McMaster. The podcast favorite college team out here wins over Guelph X 15-14, as I just said. And so, Ben, did you have a chance to take in this final? Was it a universe point, or was this more of a point before the whistle? Like, what was going on here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a universe point. We'll get to open soon, but it was a universe point. It was in the opposite corner of where I happened to be in the moment, so I didn't really get to see a whole lot. If I'm remembering correctly, it ended pretty. I did see. I do. Now that I'm thinking about it,
Yeah,
I do
jog the
remember
memory
Guelph.
here.
Yeah, I do remember Guelph. I'm pretty sure Guelph had possession on their end of the field, their end zone. I'm pretty sure it was a deep shot that ended up not working out for them. They turned it over. Mac works it up and scores. So Guelph had their chance, but Mac ends up taking it, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, well, someone will fact check us if that's not true, but only the suck people that were there, of course. But you say work it up, and of course it's a forest field, so work it up is it could be like 2 throws and you're zipping in, right? So shout out here to Waterloo taking down Toronto. So Toronto had been undefeated up until that semifinals loss, and so the Toronto loses 2 straight, a 10-8 result to McMaster Y, and then a close 8-7 result to Waterloo. So Waterloo gets third, meaning that the overall winner is which team from women's?
From the full series.
Yeah.
That would be McMaster because they had 2 tournament wins. So,
okay, so congrats to the maroon team. I think you're maroon and black, white maybe are your colors, but congrats to you. Now let's shift to open because you said some spicy things going on. I'm going to explain the pools because you're going to explain the crossovers because there's some stuff going on there. So 12 teams in this one, 4 pools of 3. So you kind of only get 2 pool play games, but of course there's the crossovers as I just mentioned, which Ben will explain. So Pool C, Carleton, London, can't say where they're at, what school they represent, of course, but London and York. Carleton goes 2-0. Both teams beat up on York a little bit. Sorry, Lions, but Carleton, London, 11-10 matchup. Was that University? Do you remember?
I believe it was, if I'm remembering correctly.
But all these caveats, right? Because this happened like almost a week ago now. So just remember that, folks. Pool D, Guelph, Waterloo A, and Humber. Waterloo A sneaking a 16-15 victory over Guelph. Love to see an actual college team out here as well. So little do people know that yours truly here actually went to Humber for a year. So kind of got my start in the sport industry through that program. So big shout out to the Hawks of Humber showing up to this tournament. Pool E, another team traveling far and wide. That's Sherbrooke. Hey, we love it. Vert they are. That's cool. They go 2-0. They take down TMU and McMaster Y pretty easily, I would say. And then Pool F, some more local teams out here. McMaster X, Toronto, and Waterloo B. McMaster X winning that pool. That sets up some crossover action. So, Ben, you made the schedule. What's going on with the crossovers out here?
Yeah, it's just the normal crossover with an extra game. That's the way I'd put it. With the pools of 3, you only get 2 pool play games. So rather than just the single crossover and going into the bracket, and that would also mean if you're first place, you don't get any crossover. We try to get that extra game in. Makes things also a little bit more fair in some ways. If there happened to be a pool that was significantly stronger than another pool, you still have a chance of the 3 teams finishing from one of the initial pools finishing fairly high in the tournament. So there are several reasons to do that. I personally like this format a lot. But yeah, so we have Pool G, which is a crossover of the initial C and F pools. You carry over the results from the other team that joins you from the initial pool that you were in, and then you play second and third from the pool you cross over with. So London and Toronto would be they were the 2 second place teams going into Pool G. So that was the big matchup in that pool. Toronto ends up beating London in that one, 13-11. I will say that it's no secret that those 2 teams are teams that I've played with in the past. So I was. Well,
maybe some people don't know that. So it's now you're releasing it to public.
Yes, now more people know that. But I was particularly interested in watching that game.
Who are you cheering for? Can you say?
I will not say that for several reasons. But yeah, so that win over London means that Toronto gets first place in that pool. They just them finishing over London just gives them a slightly better matchup in quarters, and then York and Waterloo B don't quite make it out of that pool into the quarters. And then Pool H was the other one. Guelph was, I would say, at least based on the results, the clear top team from that pool. The big game, I would say, one of the big game of the tournament for these two teams was the TMU Humber matchup, because I think those two teams were really looking to make it to the bracket to get that, to make it into the top 8. So that was the big game for them. And yeah, it ends up going Humber's way. They never ended up submitting the score for that game. So if
I was going to say, it says 1-0.
Yeah,
I don't think that's
so
true. But
if anyone from that game is listening, especially the captains, if you submit the score now, I will still add it.
Ben, they should get disqualified for that. No, like, come on, you're not saying the score's on time here.
I could have gone around and made them submit it faster, but I did see the end of that game. I think it was about 14-11. It was really tight for most of the game, and then I think Humber kind of broke it open right at the end, if I'm remembering correctly. So that sends Humber into the bracket and unfortunately eliminates TMU from contention.
Hey, a real college in the team here in this university tournament, so we do like that. So now we go into quarters. I'm looking at the results to see any potential upsets here. So you mentioned, we didn't get a chance to talk about this yet, but there were first place crossovers. So that was McMaster X versus Carleton, with McMaster X winning, and then Waterloo A and Sherbrooke crossed over. So those were all your number one seeds from the pools. But if I'm looking at this correctly, 2 of the number one seeds fall in quarters, if I'm reading this correctly. So in the top of the bracket, we see McMaster X beat Humber 19-11, and then Sherbrooke eking out a win over Toronto 15-14. But then London, coming from the ashes of Pool G, they beat Waterloo and not particularly close, 13-5, and especially in indoor, that's really not close. That means the team on offense just really cannot score there. A much closer game in the final quarterfinal here, as Guelph takes down Carleton 11-9. London keeps going on their run here. So Ben's alma maters, making their way to the semis. They beat Guelph 15-7. McMaster X, a 6-point win over Sherbrooke, setting up a McMaster X London final. 12-11 is the score. And Ben, I'm going to give it to you now to talk us what happened, because I assume you were watching this.
I wish I could say I was closely watching that.
Tough.
So it was, I won't explain too much, but I mean, part of the issue happening was there was another group using the domes right after us, so I had to really quickly take away the cones. I was kind of in position, ready to go right away, so I did not get to see the end of that game. But I believe I do know it was a universe point, and if you go to the MAC Instagram accounts, I do believe they have the final throw of that game to secure the win. There was also another universe point game happening at the same time in the 5th place game between U of T and Sherbrooke. So there were U of T and Waterloo. But yeah, unfortunately I can't give much more insight as to how
too bad.
Those games ended.
Well, we know they're spicy. That's it. Sherbrooke does take the 3rd place game. And so now, drum roll a little bit here. Who won the Uni Series, though, in Open? Mm-hmm. Who won?
Yeah, so this was a tighter one. I don't have the points open in front of me, but it was a tie between Guelph and McMaster. So essentially, this MAC win gave them a tie with with Guelph. I believe they each had a first place finish and a second place finish.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna fact check you right now as I'm looking. McMaster did come first in Brampton, and Guelph came first in Burlington, beating McMaster.
And you take your top two results. So even though they each, I believe, played at all three tournaments in the series, you just take your top two results. So if they each had a first place finish and a second place finish, then those would be their top two results. You don't include the third tournament.
Yeah, I just want to correct myself really quick. I was looking at the women's standings for Brampton. McMaster X came third in that tournament. Guelph is the team that came in second. So Guelph came second in that tournament. Obviously, McMaster X won this Toronto tournament. Guelph won previously in the Burlington tournament, where McMaster X came second. So because it's tied in the points, who actually gets the tiebreaker?
Yeah, so the first tiebreaker after the points is you go back and look at the head-to-head games between those two teams. So we go back and look at all the McMaster versus Guelph games from the series. And yeah, they faced each other twice in Burlington, each of them winning one of those games. I believe both of those were 1-point games, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, so 1-1 against each other in Burlington, and then in Brampton, Guelph had a pretty convincing win over McMaster. So with a 2-1 record over McMaster, Guelph takes the tiebreaker and wins the series.
Does Guelph know that? Are they celebrating? I know there's some like meme account out there. Do they know that they won?
That's a good question. I think their Instagram account reposted the Ultimate Canada post, so I suspect at least someone knows, but I don't know. I do realize it's a bit of an underwhelming way to win a series when you just
tiebreakers.
You hear about the calculations that were done too, and then you realize, oh yeah, we did win the series. It's not the same as one final tournament where you actually get to win on the field. But yeah, I haven't spoken to anyone from Guelph, but I'm going to assume they probably know.
Okay, well, congrats to you. That's for those that don't know, that's also, I've been to a lot of schools is what you're going to notice, but that is my alma mater. Truthfully, I did my undergrad there. So congrats to the Griffins of Guelph, Ontario. They win the Open. McMaster, was it Y? X? I can't remember now, but they win women. So congrats to both of you. Uni series is over, but of course, uni's things are still happening. So, you thought there was only one guest here. That's not true. I missed this in the intro, but it's in the show notes, so you should be able to see it. But Danie Proby will be joining us, or joining me, excuse me, to talk about Northwest Challenge. She'll join as a host to talk about the results, and then we'll transition to being a guest speaker to speak directly about UBC's experience there, doing pretty well in that tournament. So that's what's coming up after the break. Ben, thank you for coming on. First time, not the last time that we'll see you on the show. Thank you for coming on, and then we're going to hit up the main event after this quick break.
Hey, c'est Phil Dorval, directeur technique pour Ultimate Québec, et vous écoutez le Huckin Podcast, votre guide pour l'Ultimate canadien d'un océan à l'autre.
Welcome to the main event. We got a special guest in the house. We're going to have two faces of Danie is what I'm going to call it. So currently, this is going to be guest host Danie, and then shortly after it'll be Coach Danie as just an interview guest. Okay, so we're talking Northwest Challenge here on the main event. Pretty big event, like the last premier women's event in the college calendar, from what I know. So Danie, you're going to talk about what happened Northwest Challenge, starting with the other BC team out in the house, Victoria.
Yeah, it was a very exciting tournament to follow along with. I am a little sick, so I apologize if I'm sounding a little like I'm underwater. It kind of feels like I am. But yeah, so yeah, University of Victoria was in Pool D, which was the larger pool because it had BYU in it. For those of you that don't know, BYU does not play on Sundays. So they had a showcase game on Friday against UW, which, just a fun anecdote, UW got a Callahan in that game for a hold.
Calahold.
I feel like a Calahold. Yes, very good. So very interesting. I knew that pool was going to be tough. There was Oregon in that pool, BYU, who's really, really good, highly ranked, Victoria, and Wisconsin. So the 4 teams there, they all get an extra game because of this. So UVic was set to face Wisconsin first, and Wisconsin's a good team. And so Victoria was able to beat them 12-8 in their first game. So it was a good win. Winning by 4 is a nice margin. And then the next game was against Oregon. I feel like we were there watching the beginning of this game, or sorry, the University of British Columbia was watching the beginning of this game. And it looked really close. Like, I think it was close for the first half, but then Oregon just started actually connecting on their deep game and pulled away from Victoria a little bit. But I know I've said this on the podcast before. I feel like Victoria, given the right circumstances on any day, could be the type of team to beat Oregon, could be the type of team to beat UW. I think that they can. They've proven that they can hang with them in points. They just got to string a few more of them together. Then they finished up their day by playing, or their pool play rather, by playing BYU, and they ended up losing that match 13-6. BYU is extremely athletic. They like fling the disc really far. They're tall, and yeah, obviously the UVic teams just could not keep up.
But they got exciting. There's just the same on the same day they had pre-quarters, right? That's a spicy matchup that was it's on the live stream if you want to watch it. Be a subscriber, because that was a sick game against Valkyries out here.
Yeah, so in terms of their playoff performance, they ended up matching up in pre-quarters with Northeastern. Now I saw Northeastern playing as well. They have a kind of a funky zone that we hadn't really seen before. I hadn't really seen it before. And so it was quite challenging offensively to break through these zones. And it looked like Victoria was likely having a good challenge with that as well. Northeastern's a good team, got a lot of good athletes, and it looked like that game was Universe, unfortunately not going the way of Victoria. I know the UVic Vikes men's team were watching and stressing out, and unfortunately their women's team was not able to pull out the victory. So that knocked them out of playoff contention. They would have been set to play Colorado in quarters if they had won that game. So do you want to comment, or should I continue to moving on through Sunday?
I think we'll just talk through UVic's run, and then we'll go into the T-Birds run.
Who? Okay. So UVic is now in the 9th place semis. They're set to play Whitman, which is actually a D3 school. But back in my day, they competed in D1 and actually made it to D1 College Nationals for 1 year. Fun fact, when the Evil Empire had 6 bids. So they played Whitman and ended up winning that match 13-7. So taking care of business quite handedly, and then finished off their tournament with another big win over Cal. So UVic kind of like a little all over the place in terms of their results, but finishing strong with a 9th place finish on Sunday. So right now the official results have not been posted by USA Ultimate Plus. There's still more tournaments to be had this next weekend. Then there's roster checks, games get thrown out. We do have an anticipated idea of the bid picture. And right now we think the Northwest and the women's division will be sitting with 5 bids. That is including BYU's bid. If BYU doesn't go to playoffs, then that bid will likely go to UVic, Notre Dame, one of those schools that are kind of on the bubble. So UVic doing enough to keep themselves in the conversation for earning a bid for the region. Western Washington luckily had a great weekend, except for against T-Birds. For some reason, they did not play well, but they did well against all these other teams, and so they've locked in a bid for the Northwest. So that was good news for UVic.
And fact check me here, right live on the podcast. UVic took Western Washington's bid last year, correct?
Correct. It was
in that fire game to go. Keegan Freeland streaming that thing. Yeah, that was sick. That was a good time.
They can do it again, and I know Western knows that they're knocking on the door. That said, Western took Oregon, almost beat Oregon on Sunday of this tournament. So Western is not a team to sleep on. And at any given point, they could be a team that could beat some of the best. So that would be a spicy matchup if that's another game to go.
Yeah, I just feel like all these West, like I'm speaking specifically Northwest teams, you just play each other so often that if you scout them properly and some things catch fire, you could just like upset them. So it's definitely something interesting to keep an eye out on. And as we look at to UBC's schedule, it's nice that that UBC got some action against teams not just in their region. I'm looking now at the schedule here.
We had one in our pool play.
That's not bad though. You get a team out from the New England. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, it was fun. It was interesting to see UBC play against a team with this type of zone. They were kind of struggling at first. I think there was multiple turns on the first offensive point as they were trying to figure out the zone. And once they did, it was just kind of smooth sailings after that. But a little bit kind of sketchy at the beginning, like a little bit not as clean as I think the UBC T-Birds would have wanted to be, but they pulled out the victory 13-4 in the end. So then their next matchup was against their regional rival, Western Washington. And this was kind of on a different field. So there's 2 fields where the live streams are happening, and then there's 2 more fields about a 10-minute walk away. And so that game was happening on a different field. And I know the coaches for UBC, it's so weird to talk like this.
Hey, how's Danie going to talk in the third person? I like it.
The coaches for UBC don't overlook any opponent. So regardless of who the opponent is, they've been scouted. We know what their players do. We know what our matchups are. We know our strategy. And that was also the case for this Western Washington game. We don't want to count any chickens until they're hatched. And so UBC went out just unstoppable. 13-0 is our actual first bagel of the season. So hard to know whether Western was conserving energy or what. I know I did hear some of them on the sidelines saying it's so hard to even get the first pass off because they're just right on us all the time. And I do think that UBC's person defense is exceptional. So it is possible that that's a legitimate 13-0, but it's hard to tell. Anyways, that game ended pretty quickly. We are able to check the scores on the other games just by checking out Ultiworld, like the video streams. And the UBC team could see that the games were close, that UW was actually playing decently tight with UNC, and that Carleton was really tight with Colorado. And so all the UBC T-Birds just sprinted to the other field to watch. And the environment, the atmosphere was electric. There were so many people watching. The ejection of Tori Gray had just happened, and she was like on the other side of the fence, not being out allowed to be with her team. It was just like so much stuff was happening. It was really, really cool to be part of it. It felt like a little mini nationals almost, with Colorado pulling the upset over Carleton, while Carleton was missing arguably their best player.
Did you call upset?
Would I call it an upset?
Yeah, you use the word upset, so
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an upset.
Okay.
I think Carleton is a semifinal team.
Okay.
Colorado, I don't know. I feel like I never bet against Claire Chastain.
Yeah,
I think that there's something in the works there. I would never overlook Colorado. So yeah, I think that they're going to show up to nationals in fighting form.
Yeah, I'm looking at Colorado's schedule. They did take that. I remember seeing that. I think it was a pre-quarterfinal loss to UCSB. I know that's all the way back in Pres Day, but I remember seeing that for Colorado. So, anyways, this is not a Colorado Carleton podcast. So we're going to keep talking about the Canadian team out here, UBC. This T-Birds team then makes it all the way, well, I guess, into the quarters. Get a bye.
Well, it could be a Colorado podcast because I did have somebody on Quandary come up to me and say that they listened to the podcast.
Okay. Hello. Welcome.
And then I tried to actively recruit them to move to Vancouver and play for UBC because that's usually what I do. So shout out, I believe it was Simone, number 3, O-line handler, I believe, for Quandary. Shout outs for you.
Simone Pierotti. There you go.
I don't know thy name. You did ask a question, but I was distracted.
No, it's fine. I'm going to go on a slight tangent here. Shout out to Quandary for having all your numbers properly on the roster. As someone who helps edit some of the games for Ultiworld, it is very difficult when teams do not put their numbers on the roster. So thank you, Colorado, for doing that.
I'm surprised that it's not mandatory earlier in the season.
You should see some of the games like where it's just like there's First of all, have you seen the new recaps coming out? You've seen the stat.
Yeah,
graphic.
they're great.
Yeah, they're sweet, right? And it's very difficult for the video team to identify someone when they're just wearing a penny and no number. And so they are listed as penniless or penny person has 5 assists in the game, but we don't know who it is. So that's usually where we get the sleuthing reporters to help us add names.
Yeah, when I'm scouting teams like Vermont, I have to go like on their Instagram and go deep in the archives to figure out who people are. It's kind of annoying.
Do you think it's an anti-scouting thing or just like a too lazy to do thing?
No, it's just their vibe. But for us, we're like, or for UBC rather, we're just like, we're the numbers. They can scout us all they want. I don't care, kind of thing.
Yeah, scout the numbers. Okay. There's no question here because we're just going to segue into bracket
Playoffs.
play.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of some dominant showings out here. I'll let you want to go through it, or you want me to go through it?
You go through it. I'll give some color game by game.
Okay, so after Washington beat Whitman 13-3 in the pre-quarters, UBC takes down Element 13-7. Still a good team. I know they've lost some players. Obviously, Abby Heckel being the main people that most people have heard about. But I still think they got some good players. So 13-7. Now this is kind of more. We're segueing here into guest Danie than host Danie here. So you can use we all you want. What did you see out there in that quarterfinal?
Well, it was somehow we've actually been to. This is our 3rd tournament that we've attended with UW, and this is the first time we've actually matched up on them this season. So this is the first time we had the Gaudu versus Gaudu battle in college history. And so it was much anticipated. We were at hanging out with the Gaudus at the Boland's house on Saturday night prior. We were kind of doing some scouting with our team and talking about the next day. And Anna, Gaudu's mom and dad were like stressing a little bit about the game. Like they want what's best for both their kids. Both their kids have very different styles of play, kind of like deal with pressure differently. And so it was definitely something that was on a lot of our minds. And Lauren Gaudu did match up on Anna quite a bit. And it was pretty funny to see how both of them dealt with it. And I think they both played great. They're both incredible athletes. So it was not a surprise that they both had great games. But UBC just kind of has the depth. And I know we always talk about this, but the difference between our depth this year and our depth last year is that our depth can score. Like before, our D-line could get blocks, but I think we struggled to convert. Whereas this year, our D-line handlers are really confident breaking the mark. Our D-line cutters are really confident cutting against a break force or throwing it deep and are just a little bit more aggressive, it feels like. And so our conversion is so much higher. And so it's just so much easier for us to get ahead big in games when we have 3 full lines of people that can put on extremely tight pressure.
Yeah, I might get you not to say too much so you don't give away all your secrets, because I bet you some quandary people are going to start listening to this podcast. You know what I mean? So
what did they get out of what I just said? I didn't give up any secrets.
Now we're speaking of quandary. The one thing I'll say about this tournament, and I know Charlie said this on Deep Look, I kind of wish we could see UBC versus UNC, but hey, that might have to wait for another weekend, possibly in May. So you take on Quandary and you win 13-6. Talk us through what do you think was what was the key to success in beating Colorado? Obviously, a team that you went up against in semis and were unsuccessful in last year. So getting a big win here must feel like pretty confident for the team as well to get that W in the way you did it, right?
Yeah, we definitely went up early in this game. Again, the defensive pressure, I think we started on D and I think rattled off 3 or 4 breaks straight, which was really confidence building. We have a line. One of our D lines is a bit younger to the team. They're not all like first years, but they're mostly first and second years on our team on this other D line. And when they got a break against players that played in that semi and played in that final last year, we kind of knew that we were going to be in control. because of kind of the style and the system that we've developed this year and the defensive adjustments that we're making. We felt in the driver's seat the entire time. And it was just about being able to kind of maintain our high level of performance, even when we're kind of getting ahead in the score. So it does feel like quite lopsided. I know Colorado had played a really tight game with Carleton the day before, whereas we didn't have any tight games yet. They had played an extra game that we didn't have to play. No, they didn't. Carleton did. But yeah, they did kind of look like they ran out of gas. I think they just aren't as deep, and we were able to run at 100%. We do have a couple fast pickups this year, like Claire Wang is lightning fast, number 3 on our team, and Megan Gillis is playing for us, and she was unstoppable all weekend. So I know we lost some people, but we gained some friends. Oh yeah, tangent. Our alum surprised us. We had, I don't even know, 7 or 8 of them that graduated last year, made the drive down to Seattle. And then our team, when they showed up, it was before semis. People on our team were just like crying. Like it was just such a nice moment, and they were there the whole time. And so for them to be able to see us beat Colorado like that, I think was really healing for them.
Hey, we're self-help podcast as well, not just Frisbee. So
Yes.
The other semi I'm looking here was happening at the same time. Did you have a chance to see any of the historic, as the Deep Low podcast host called, the big win that happened between Carleton over UNC? Did you have a chance to see any of that, or were you still playing your game?
Yeah, we finished our game early. So we were able to watch the last few points of that game. And again, the crowd was crazy. Carleton, I was also checking on my phone, because there's no other way to check the score other than watching the video. And so I had my phone in my clipboard. And so I was kind of seeing an update every now. Once we were ahead enough, I didn't tell anybody. I was obviously talking to Robbie about it, but I didn't tell anyone on the team, hey, Carleton's up. But Carleton was basically leading the entire game. I believe UNC got 2 breaks right at the end, and then had a couple opportunities to break to win. And so even though that pick situation is kind of controversial, just like our final at Stanford was kind of controversial with the Helena Tremblay catch, not catch in the end zone, I think that this is quite controversial too, because it does look like it's a pick, but then the observer's saying it wouldn't have affected. I don't think you would have been able to catch up, etc. It's hard when a game like that gets decided on a call by an observer, whether you agree with the call or not. It's just a tough situation. And as a sports fan, we all wanted to see that moment and let that moment exist, whereas we had to have everyone go back. We had to have a discussion. It was kind of sad that moment didn't get to really manifest in the world as we all expected it would. I'm also really personally sad because I wanted to play UNC in the final. Carleton is a great team, and we really enjoy playing Carleton. I think it's a really good matchup for us. It's really fun, but I have never coached against UNC. So that was definitely something I was looking forward to. And we wanted to be the ones to end the streak, but Carleton got there first.
Yeah, all streaks are made to be broken at some point. You knew it had to happen, especially when they started that website. I feel like that just put a curse on UNC because they started the website. So it was definitely more, people were definitely seeing it more that this was a streak that was dating back to 2020. So congrats, Carleton, for ending the streak. You then stood up against UBC, and the final ends 13-8. I believe that is the closest scoreline a team puts up on the T-Birds all weekend. So I know Carleton in general, if you look at their roster and if you just watch any of their games, they have kind of a smaller roster than a lot of other teams kind of in this division. So, you talk about the running out of gas with Colorado. Perhaps, I don't know if that's what happened here, but that's always something to keep in mind with a roster that's a bit shorter that relies on certain people to double and triple shift.
Yeah, so they had, I think, 2 Universe games this weekend before playing us, whereas the most someone had scored against us was 7 for us going into this final. Plus, we're deeper. So kind of played into our favor. We knew that their stars were going to be tired. We knew that they were going to be drunk on emotions after just beating UNC rather, and then having to be that wasn't the tournament. We still have a game to play against UBC. like that would have been really hard to manage. And so we knew that we would likely have an advantage going to the game, that we were ready to go. We wanted to win. Whereas they were kind of a little bit like potentially feeling a little complacent, potentially. I could see a world where that's true. I do just think my team is great. I just did all the stats for every streamed game. So basically every tight game or every good game we've had this season has been streamed. So I did the full stats for it. And I only had one D-line player turn the disc over in the final, which is crazy.
Wait, you only had one turnover in the final?
No. Let me be clear. I only had one D-line player turnover the disc in the final.
So get it together, O-line. What's going on here?
No, the O-line was clean. Like we only got broken 3 times on Sunday. But sometimes I do have like mashup lines where I do cross over some O-line players and everything. So I just think that I'm specifically really proud of my D-line and their D-line offense.
Shout out D-line. You helped carry the team to a title. So this is where now I'm going to segue into a couple questions, Dane, before we sign off of this main event. This is very weird now because this is like truly host guest. So obviously there's a lot of hype around your team, not just like your own self hype, but like people around the industry pundits out there. So how does the team kind of stay grounded, or how do you try to manage that as they hear about how great they are and see the results as well, right? It's not just like hearing it, it's also seeing it. How do you try to manage that to get them ready for nationals in a couple months?
I don't know if this specific thing needs management. I think I am working with a team of overachievers, high achievers, athletes that really, really, really are hard on themselves and are just, really afraid of making mistakes and all those kinds of things. And so this era of T-Birds where we have some swagger and some confidence is exactly where we need to be. They need to be watching videos of themselves, hyping themselves up, hyping each other up, because they are sick. They're really good. They work really hard. They're super smart. They're aggressive, and they're really good teammates, and they deserve everything that they're feeling right now.
Yeah, appreciate you sharing that. I like it because often, some coaches, especially I think about like at the varsity level here, like with my teams that like I work with. Sometimes like teams will go on like social media blackouts before like a tournament because they don't want to hear the noise. So it's kind of interesting to hear different coaches' perspectives and how they're wanting to get their team ready. So speaking of that, regular season is over for your team, and you have two tournaments before nationals in conferences and regionals. What's the team doing to kind of get prepared for another, long 2 months before we hit the big dance?
Yeah, well, first of all, they have earned a nice week off, which we haven't done all season. So they're trying to do and not do anything Frisbee this week. It's hard. I'm sure they want to talk about it. I'm sure they're watching the games. But we're trying to get them to catch up on their schoolwork and maybe go for a sauna, something like that, just like something different before we kind of head into the postseason. We have, I think, 8 practices till conferences, and then another however many practices before regionals, and then a bunch of practices before nationals. So we have lots of time. I think a lot of the stuff we're going to be doing is working on specific things for specific teams potentially. And just having footage, shout out Ultiworld, makes it so much easier for us to make adjustments on our own systems. And being able to do our own stats gives us like a nice snapshot of like where our turnovers are coming. The stats I was able to do after Stanford really helped us design those last 5 practices going into Northwest Challenge. And the thing that was an issue at Stanford was not an issue at Northwest Challenge. So shout out footage. You're the real deal, and you're making all of us better ultimate players and ultimate coaches.
Yeah. In particular, I want to shout out Kelly Rusin, who helps remote produce pretty much most of the streams. So we have access to a Discord channel now, so I can see who's like the producers that are like running these things. And so, the camera operators too, especially when it's like raining. When you see raining streams, folks, someone is there sitting in the rain filming this thing. So thank you, camera operators, because they're staying there, you know, let's say it's Florida warm. They're staying on the hot sun for like 8 hours just filming Ultimate for you to watch. So be a subscriber and support. That's the main message.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, Danie, before we sign you off as a guest here? Any other thoughts? Frisbee, life, philosophy, I don't know.
Subscribe to the T-Birds newsletter to get really cute behind the scenes updates. It's $5 a month. Frisbee's really expensive to fly to tournaments, and it'd mean a lot. Appreciate you.
Yeah, are you doing any other fundraisers, or is that the main one right now?
We have like a Krispy Kreme fundraiser that they do quite often. I think it makes them a good chunk of money. I also want to shout out the Bolins and the Gaudius for letting us stay at their houses and for feeding everybody. It's really nice to have like a motherly, fatherly touch for our final tournament of the regular season, to be able to stay in somebody's backyard and have a big barbecue. It's just like the best vibes ever. So you're the real deal. Love ya.
Yeah. College Nationals, you got to see it, folks. So like the parents, they bring out the spread. I see it at both D3, D1. Like the parents come in full force. They got all the gear and the table of like food that they bring, and they're like walking it over to the different field sites. It's kind of cool to see. So it's not that far for certain parts of Canada to go check out College Nationals. You should do it. So anyways, Danie, thank you for coming on. I'm going to hit up the subscriber only. I'm going to be talking about like elimination brackets. I'll explain it in the subscriber only. It's coming off of my experience with the varsity level and how there's some tournaments where if you lose, you're directly eliminated, and wondering what that would look like in Frisbee if we ever did that. So anyways, head to that if you would like. Otherwise, Danie, thank you for coming on. You get the final word here.
I've been a long-time listener, so I really appreciate being able to be a guest on the Huckin podcast. It really means a lot. So yeah, just like thank you for making my dreams come true, Theo.
And long-time listener, first-time caller. That's where we're going to leave it. All right, thank you, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.